Center. Please welcome Mark. Glenn, thank you. Thanks to the Chamber for putting together this series. There is no better way to learn than to model. And we've had a chance in this community to model great leaders. We've got one here today with us. So let's jump right in. Joe Guerra, Sequoia Holdings, Canongate Golf, welcome. Joe, I'm not going to give you your title. I'm not going to talk about your company because we want you to do that. Let's start with that. Tell us about Sequoia Holdings. Tell us about your title, who you are, how many employees you have, where you work. Tell us about your company.
First, I'd like to say I'd wear socks if I don't have to sit at a table. I see a guy in this place.
Let's check the level of the camera.
And we're not getting that. It's from here up, okay?
Secondly, I like to be an imposter, and virtually half these people are either play golf with me or work with me, so I'm kind of at a disadvantage here. But I do appreciate the opportunity to remind myself about who I am. I haven't done that in a while, so it's. He said it was very fluid. Mark and I had a brief conversation about how this would go, so I'm going to just kind of speak off the top of my head here and try to provide you with some reflections about who I am, what I'm about, and how this all came to be, which makes perfectly good sense to me, by the way. Well, our company, we'll start with that, and then I'll kind of back up and tell you a little bit about how we got here. We are now about 5,000 employees. We operate in 13 states. We own courses in 3 states. The economy has been, a very telling factor in both the development of our business, our management service business, and our core business. We feel like we've kind of beat the odds when it comes to that. We have a major office, obviously, here in Newnan, Georgia. This is home for us, and then we have a secondary office, which is probably about a third as large in Houston, and then a smaller one in Denver. And those are the 3 principal markets where we operate. We acquired the company, and I acquired the company in 2002 from the Rockmore family. Many of you guys know Rocky and Jim and Lee and Jeff Burnett. And we acquired the original 7 courses in Coweta County, Douglas County, and Fayette County in 2002, and then we grew those 7 courses to include, I think, 23 courses in the Atlanta metro area. And our value proposition is very simple. We're the guys that provide you with a membership, a very affordable membership that gives you access to all 23 clubs for one price. And that's our secret sauce. And the reason I acquired the company was I was introduced to the company in 1985 by Bill Rockmore, and I remember I was 25 years old or something. At the time, 85 was just like a 2-lane highway, and I remember heading back to the airport, and I was with my mentor and the guy who taught me the business, David Price, and I said, David, I think they've got a better mousetrap, and that was the wrong thing to say, because he immediately says, well, it's not a better mousetrap, it's a different mousetrap, and here's why. And he started telling me about why our company's mousetrap was just as effective. Well, 30 years later, I think we had a better mousetrap. I think Bill Rockmore had a better mousetrap. And I was very attracted to that model. And my background in school had always been statistics and finance, and more of a math-oriented guy, although it's hard to tell now because it's like, where did all that go? I was a pretty smart guy. But I'm much more of an organizational behavior type general manager now, CEO, as opposed to a finance and accounting and statistics type leader, although I have somebody who does that for me who's quite good at it. Who won the Kirby, by the way. So anyway, what I saw was a business that had a very high relative market share. So we controlled 20% of the golf holes, but we did 50% of the rounds. And anytime you see a business that has a very high relative market share, that has high barriers to entry, generally will sustain itself over a long period of time. The other very appealing factor was that the original golf course was built in 1965. It was 2002. It's sort of the platform and the business had proven the test of time. So that was all very attractive. And then when we benchmarked the demographic profile, if you will, or the demand for golf for those golf courses on the south side of Atlanta, we saw that the demographics and the strength of the market was much higher and better in other parts of the Atlanta metro area, which would stand to reason if you were to extrapolate your experience on the south side and took it to the north side, you should sustain as good, if not better, results, and in fact, that has happened. So now, that's the company, and we do business in the Atlanta metro area in the state of Georgia as Canongate Golf. Our products are stratified from entry-level private clubs to premium private clubs. We have a resort. We have other daily fee courses that we operate throughout the United States. We have our first property in California. I've charged that executive with trying to acquire a cluster there. We'd like to have, quite a few courses there just to have the ability to get back to see my family. And obviously, the California market is a very good market, and one we understand very, very well, and has been very good to us in the golf market. So growing up, I grew up in a town. It's interesting. There's a lot of parallels between Newnan and where I actually grew up. I know that sounds crazy because they say, well, you're from LA, but LA is a big place. LA's got 40 million plus people in that metropolitan area, and I grew up in a town that felt relatively isolated with about 30,000 people. We grew up with, we moved there from downtown Los Angeles, which, not downtown, but East Los Angeles, which was a predominantly ethnic Mexican-American community, to the suburbs and assimilated with, without I would say without a lot of difficulty, but there was definitely, it was definitely interesting from that's back when you were in California. If you were Hispanic, you were truly a minority. I didn't see anybody like that looked like me anywhere in my entire universe and sphere of friends and where I had grown up. Now, I think that was a big plus because I think that really catapulted, motivated me to want to be successful, and I had the ability to see the contrast between where I had grown up my first 10 years of my life versus the next really 12 or 13 years. Covina was a great place. My parents were upper middle class. They were both well educated. Both had master's degrees. My mother was an educator and started at school. My father was the assistant director of the Department of Public Social Services for LA County. He's a psychologist. This is probably where a lot of my psychology interest comes from and human behavior interest comes from, which I find to be probably the most valuable attribute in leadership and what I consider to be one of the things that has really helped me in dealing with the development and growth of my company and its people. So went to school there, traditional upbringing, very good upbringing, lots of love, not a lot of money, lots of love, lots of development and coaching. My dad was a Marine, so you get what I mean. He had a simple saying that he said, if you don't feel like doing it for you, you will do it for me. And of course, I did my best to rebel. I was not an angel as a child. I was definitely a rascal. I always had a risk-taking gene, always had to push the envelope. It's an integral part of who I am. I try to measure that risk-taking with daring but prudent risks, meaning risks that I think are calculated with, as much of that subjectivity removed from that risk-taking as possible. But that doesn't mean from time to time I'm not going to make a risky move that ultimately will fail. So, I'm probably going to launch 10 things, and 7 of them are going to be really, really good, and I hope, and 2 of them so-so, and 1 of them probably not good at all. And I think that's okay. I'm okay with that, with myself, so long as the 7 good ones, are offset the bad ones, and also we never risk the mothership, meaning the core business when we take these risks. I went to, I got into a variety of colleges, and I did something really stupid when I was 21 and got married. And I literally got swept up in that thing. The lady I married and had 2 children with, and these girls they were with me all growing up, so it's not like it was every other weekend and all of that. And those of you who know my family know I'm as close to them as I am as anybody in the world. But her family owned this business, which I think is hysterical, called Lover's Lane. They owned the bridal shop, the tuck shop, the catering business in Glendale, and I believe it's still there. And I met her, and the next thing I know, I was getting married. and I still remember walking down that aisle going, what am I doing? But, so it really had not so much to do with her as it did with me. And of course, though, that's one of the risks of being, an ambitious, forward-thinking, positive person is a lot of times, you refuse to see the adversity that is facing you, and you refuse to acknowledge it. And when you get into that situation, you say, hey, we're going to make this work. And that's exactly what I did, even though I think I kind of knew that there was a high probability it wouldn't work at the outset. In hindsight, at the time, I'm like, we'll figure it out. Let's go. And we did. A big wedding and all that stuff, and 2 beautiful kids. But that was probably one of the regrettable things that I had done, although I have 2 wonderful kids out of it. I went to, so anyway, college. I figured out in my junior year of high school that education was important. My father was a highly intelligent person. I mean, he didn't speak any English until, I think, the 9th grade, and then he memorized the dictionary. And he taught it to us. And expected us to use the King's English. His dictation and his word composition and writing was exquisite. We were expected to do the same. I think he took an Amy Vanderbilt course in manners or something, which most of I've forgotten, but as a kid I can remember sitting there watching my P's and Q's very carefully. I think there's he expected the most out of us, and given the fact that he was a psychologist, he had convinced us that we were capable of doing anything. He said, I've tested you guys, and he did. He had tested us, over and over. And he says, he never said we were brilliant or anything. He just said, you're above intelligence, above average intelligence. You've got a great family. There's no reason in the world why you can't succeed. And I expect the best out of you, and you should expect the best out of yourself. Funny enough, I was scared to death of him. He never laid a hand on us. But it was enough to just, I really thought he hated me until I was like 18 years old. He didn't. He loved me very much, and he's a very warm and, kind person, but and an interesting person, because he, one of our 8 tenets of leadership is theme and feel. My father was very much, in addition to being, very much an ambitious and successful person, he was also, very much this theme and feel. He was an artist, and my son just graduated from design school, and he's in London, and he's doing industrial design, and that I think comes, largely from my family. And my father's focused both on business and also on art. And I think that's a big part of, another big contributor to our success is our fundamental understanding and appreciation of aesthetics and what people feel and what they think when they come through a club and experience, pleasure and endorphins released and all those kinds of things. And so, anyway, I selected real estate as a career, and I decided that I wanted to be a real estate executive, and was able to get into a real estate program at Cal Poly Pomona. And but from my junior year forward, I don't think I got a B. If I got a B, I don't remember getting a B. I mean, from that point forward, education became very important. And I realized that I could compete at the highest level academically, and so I graduated with honors. I think I worked for 6 months for Hilton. I was working at the Beverly Hilton, by the way, as an operating engineer, and that was an interesting job because what you do is you fix everything, right? So many things came out of that job. First and foremost, I was offered an opportunity to work at the union, and then I had great leaders there, and then I was exposed to leadership at Hilton. Their headquarters was there, and that's when I first met somebody who took an interest in me and said, you need to go to business school. He was the CFO of Hilton at the time, a guy by the name of John Giovenco. And I dated his daughter for a little bit. I got to know him, and he just said, you just got to do this. And so I applied, I was accepted, I graduated, and ultimately was hired by a company called American Golf, David Price, and he was one of the 2 founders of the industry. He and a guy by the name of Robert Dedman are really 2 pioneers. He's a Forbes 400 guy. He's eminently successful, and the combination of all of those experiences with my father and spending 15 years with David Price, I think, positioned me and qualified me for the job I've had this last really 15 years as a CEO. American Golf was we were 25,000 employees, and we were almost $1 billion in revenue. We were in 4 continents. So the company I have now is a shadow of that in many ways, but so much more fun. And fulfilling and interesting, I think. I don't want to go back to the AGC days, but I'm glad I climbed that mountain and was able to succeed there. So there's a little bit of background.